Perfumery is well and truly an art form, and as such, the stricter and more detailed the rating system, the poorer the job the system will likely do to give justice to the fragrance at hand. When I read other people's ratings of fragrances, certainly I may glance at the number of stars allotted, but I'm more interested in the words raters use to describe the fragrances, as well as their experiences with them. As a result, this is what I also try to focus on when reviewing. But nonetheless, although I generally choose to avoid giving stars, I aim to mention what facets of the fragrance are particularly incredible, substandard, or mediocre, if it's helpful to you. And actually, having an idea of rating criteria helps me determine whether or not I should add a particular fragrance to my collection. When it comes to art, entertainment, and academics in Western culture, the 10-point scale is common, and in this scale, any number below 7 points is considered a poor score. However, I think the 5-star system is more appropriate for perfumery, even though 0.5 stars are sometimes given, simply because it looks cleaner, simpler, and is commonly used. The midway score of 3 stars is considered a positive, whereas 6 or 6.5 on the 10-point scale system might seem negative. 2.5 and 3.5 stars is probably the average rating for the majority of scents out there. Scores of 4 aren't common, at least they're not supposed to be common, and 5s are pretty rare. Also, 2 fragrances with the same overall rating aren't considered equal. 2 perfumes may warrant a score of 3 for completely different reasons. One might be pleasant but has no standout quality, and the other might do one or more things extremely well but have one or more flaws, such as dreadful projection. It's hard not to be biased in reviews, as everyone is swayed toward one thing or another. I tend to prefer woody orientals and gourmands overall, so it's hard for me to be fair to florals. I think most reviewers try to be somewhat objective, and I think the good ones will be transparent about their preferences. In today's video, I'd like to share with you a list of criteria that are typically used by perfume reviewers, which include general smell and quality, originality, projection and sillage, longevity, versatility, value, likability, or compliment frequency, packaging and bottling, as well as an overall rating and recommendations. First is quality. The quality of a fragrance is the most important, but often the most subjective of all criteria. Ingredient quality is often considered when judging, but a natural perfume or one with expensive or rare materials may not smell better. Perhaps the main question to be asked is how the smell of the fragrance makes you feel. What mood does it convey, and what memories, if any, does it cause to surface? When one speaks of a fragrance's quality, the concept of complexity is usually factored in. Complexity refers not only to how well different notes and accords combine, but also how the scent develops as it evolves on your person. This perhaps most importantly includes the dry down, which is the final and longest lasting stage of a perfume. A scent may be magical at the opening, but the top notes are almost always short-lived, and if the scent becomes average in an hour, its rating's going to suffer. A scent could also start out average, but develop into some kind of wonderful. This, of course, is why it's best to try a perfume on for a few hours before committing to a bottle. Some scents are criticized for being linear or smelling the same right from start to finish, but this might not be a bad thing. Again, it's subjective. So here's my rating system for quality. Number 2 is originality. Does this fragrance smell like the plethora of average fragrances available on the market, or does it stand out and surprise you with its uniqueness? Just because the fragrance breaks new ground, however, does not mean that it smells like heaven on steroids. But in a world where hundreds of fragrances come onto the market every year, originality has to factor in. The flip side to all this is that incredible fragrances of times past tend to generate flattering flankers and imitations, and although not original, the newer fragrances might improve on the more classic version. Personally, however, I have rarely liked a flanker for more than the original, and I feel that fragrances that imitate others should not really deserve the credit. Here's my system for rating this criterion. Number 3 is projection and sillage. A scent needs to be able to project. Generally, you want other people to smell you too. Everyone's skin is different though. I try it on several parts of my skin and it projects differently depending on where I spray, but I'm looking at the overall picture. While projection refers to the minimum distance needed to perceive the fragrance, sillage refers more to the scent trail that is a result of movement. For simplicity, I just put these two together. More projection and more sillage isn't always better though. Ooh, no, it can be too much. One thing is certain, I think, however. If people can barely smell the fragrance, no matter how wonderful it is, what's the point? It's rather like having a fascinating idea at a conference, but having horrendous presentation skills and slides. The audience will likely fall asleep because they aren't compelled to listen enough. So when it comes to sillage and projection, this is my 5-point system here. Longevity. This is a straightforward criterion. How long does the scent last on skin or hair or clothing? The good news is that if a scent performs poorly in terms of longevity, you can always spray some more. Here's my 5-point rating for that criterion. Number 5 is versatility. Summer, winter, fall, or spring, day or night, formal or informal, mature or youthful, safe or avant-garde. Versatility in perfumery is a word that is generally used in the context of being safe, which means a low chance of offending someone. This often conflicts with originality, but fragrances that are both unique and safe are gems, I think. A versatile fragrance is one that you can wear to work, to a classy event, out on the town clubbing, and for casual occasions, practically anywhere. It won't offend too many people, and different genders can pull it off in any season. Good luck finding that one scent that will do all that. Just call to mind your wardrobe and you'll easily see what I mean. Highly versatile scents do exist, however, but that may ultimately not be what you're looking for. And in that case, a lower score on the scale would be much more appropriate. And this is what I mean when I said earlier that rating in detail sometimes impedes your ability to evaluate and get the big picture. Anyway, here are my points for this criterion. Criterion number 6 is value. Very important one for me. Like longevity, projection, and versatility, this criterion is more utilitarian. Yes, the price tag on the perfume box will ultimately determine whether or not I personally buy a particular scent, but it doesn't determine if I enjoy how it smells or how it wears or even necessarily my overall rating of the scent. But in practice, it is an important criterion for most of us, so when I feel a scent is too expensive or a real steal, I'll say so in my videos. I deliberately avoid the words price or cost in the name of this criterion though, and that's because if I'm totally in love with a gorgeous, expensive perfume that has amazing sillage and longevity, I'll be more likely to invest in it than perhaps an even better one that I only can smell at a distance and goes off my skin in an hour or so. Now, of course, if minimalism in possessions is not your thing and you're not impeded by a thin wallet, then this factor will never be a criterion for you. But for most of us, it must be admitted that collecting fragrances is not a cheap hobby, and getting the biggest bang for our buck is important. Niche fragrances may be graded more harshly than cheaper designer fragrances for this reason, as they may be so abso-frickin-lutely divine, but not worth the price to some of us. It's worth stressing also that on the other side of the coin, if a fragrance costs very little, but the quality is not incredibly inspiring, I personally do not feel the great price should boost the overall rating. Here's my point system for the criterion of value. Number 7 is likability or compliment frequency. For many people, fragrance is worn more to impress others than to delight themselves. Not that receiving compliments is unpleasant, but personally, I admit to wearing a fragrance for myself more than for others. And I suppose at the end of the day, when I purchase a scent for my significant other, it's more for myself than for him. But for those who want to smell good, mostly for others, note that a high amount of compliments may indicate that a fragrance is just safe and perhaps even mediocre. Very generally speaking, I rate more unique and complex niche fragrances higher than designer fragrances, but the latter tend to generate more compliments because they are simply pleasant to more people and not strange in any way. So here's my point system for this criterion. Number 8 is packaging, including bottling. Although in my opinion the look of the bottle should not be a factor in the evaluation of the scent it contains, it is, and probably more than many hardcore perfume lovers would care to admit. If it weren't, less money would be spent on the bottle and more on its contents. The fact is that just like with sex, image and appearance sell products, as do branding, labeling, positioning, naming, and all those other marketing concepts we often love to hate. I kind of confess to taking pleasure at simply looking at my perfume bottles in my collection as well as handling them. To be sure, whether or not one likes the bottle is completely subjective. In packaging, however, there are utilitarian factors to consider as well. Does the spray atomizer work well? Is the bottle so delicate it breaks easily when you accidentally drop it? Does it leak? Does the heavy weight of a given bottle convey luxury to you? Is it light enough to pack for travel should you decide to take the whole thing? No, packaging is not the top factor when choosing a fragrance, but it cannot be denied. So here are my points for this. Number 9 is overall rating. After considering all of the above criteria, a fragrance can be given an overall score. This is usually not a mathematical average of all the factors at hand, however. It's more of a general overall impression where certain criteria may be downplayed or even ignored. It's logical that the fragrance quality and maybe originality would weigh the heaviest for most raters. Here are my points for this. The last criterion is recommendations. This is not set on a scale actually, but perfume reviewers will often suggest actions at the end of their reviews as a summary. So here are some examples. Okay, perfume lovers, that is it. Now you know how I tend to evaluate perfumes. I'm going to create a rubric, I think, and I'll put that in a blog post, so look for it down below. I don't know if it'll be up by the time I post this, but I should do it. But you know, in reality, when I'm evaluating a perfume, I don't write down the numbers or anything like that, but I do think of all these factors. And for me personally, I think that the performance, the utilitarian factors, they're the ones that kind of decide if something is full bottle worthy or not. Like it's smelling fantastic to me is a given, and of course value. But when I want to evaluate a perfume just for the smell, like I think a lot of the time I just focus on the quality and not the other stuff. Okay, I will talk to you all in my next video. Thanks for tuning in. Mwah.